What's crackling, everybody? XehrFelrose here, bringing you some Pokemon Go Battle League content. Today's video, we're taking a look at the Electric Cup meta and all 5 things in it. 6. I think the answer is actually 6. But anyway, guys, Electric Cup is coming up. We've had it before. The meta itself hasn't really changed too much since we've had it before. Some of the electric types on the meta here have had some move updates since then. So I'll talk briefly about some of the stuff you're going to see, and then maybe some teams that we can play, because while the meta is small, there are definitely some decent teams that can be played here. So Lantern sits atop the meta with the bulk and water gun surf combination that it's got. And then we have down at number 2, we got Minun, and it's probably there because it has Grass Knot and beats Lantern and the Alolan Rocks in the 1 shields. Now, Galvantula and Luxray are both sitting down underneath that. Luxray is going to be wanting Hidden Power Ground. I actually have a thought that if you wanted to, you could run Hidden Power Fire and take the Galvantula and the Electrode by surprise, because otherwise you actually lose to those 2 things in particular. But I think Luxray might be able to beat them if it has Hidden Power Fire. So if you don't have a Hidden Power Ground, try and alter your strategy with a Hidden Power Fire. I think it might be interesting. But anyway, Galvantula with Fury Cutter, Lunge, Energy Ball is going to be the top rated way to run the, I'm going to say that 5 times fast, way to run your Galvantula, but you could run Cross Poison in place of Energy Ball for the mirror. Magnezone is here because it's a Wild Charge Sim Hero. Electrode, the Hisuian Electrode specifically, is very good in this meta because it resists almost every fast move, most of the damage in general, and it's able to pump out energy balls and wild charges, which do decent damage. Daddy said doo-doo. They do decent damage in this meta, even though the wild charge is typically resisted. And then we're going to get down into the rock territory where you've got the Alolan Rocks. Shadows are going to be upgrades for the most part, as now with the Shadow boost, if you've got them, they can usually rip through things far more efficiently than they were able to before. So you see the first team here on the screen. Let's talk about this first team. Galvantula, Lantern, Electrode. I think this is going to be the core trio of the entire meta. If you're not running the rocks, you're probably running these 3 in some order. You might not run them in this exact order, but I like Galva in the lead for the lunge. I like Lantern in the back, and I like Hisuian Electrode in the back. Now, I also think that Electrode could go in the front just to keep it away from Galv, but this does devolve into an RPS sort of alignment situation. If you're not familiar with the term, RPS just means rock, paper, scissors. It means that dominant matchups, one way or the other, affect the outcome of a game much more so than anything else, which basically is like having your Galvantula into somebody else's Hisuian Electrode, and that's a very dominant matchup for your Galv because it does so much damage to it so quickly with the Fury Cutters and the bug type damage. So anyway, though, this team is probably going to be the most consistent, non-toxic team you can run in this meta. Obviously, it is a little bit weak to Energy Ball Galv in the Sims, but it depends on how you play it. The thing with this meta is because it's so small, it becomes a lot less about the RPS and so much more so about being able to manage energy, knowing matchups. And because it's a small meta, you can learn the matchups very quickly, very easily by using the repetitiveness of this meta. But, you know, for the most part, you know, as we usually talk about the Sims, it has coverage against most of the meta. Galvantula, okay, it's not going to be super amazing into Galvantulas. That's why you typically want to try to get rid of them. Galvantula in general is just the best Pokemon in this meta. You can tell me that Lantern's ranked number 1, but Galv is absolutely the best Pokemon in this meta. No cap. It's got Lunge for debuffs, and it gets there in 12 turns, which is quicker than almost everything else in this cup. And it gets the choice of having Energy Ball, which can practically one-shot a Lantern, or you can run Cross Poison and get boosts and go nuts. The only downside to Galv, obviously, is how the lack of bulk, but overall, don't always go by the Sims. You want to trust the context of the matchups, too. Obviously, you're not going to stay in against every single Galv, against every single situation. So, and you know, as we know, Galv can only do so much. It can't solo an entire team. So, that being said, let's take a look at team number 2 here, which is going to be the other side of the spectrum. We're talking about the Alolan Rocks. Now, the Alolan Geodude is here. I don't expect too many people to be running Alolan Geodude unless they're like me and they happen to have one and they don't know what else to do with their Stardust, and then they go broke like me. So Alolan Geodude is not going to be likely to see here, but Graveler and Golem both are going to be very common as the rocks here. Shadow or non, they're both very, very powerful in this meta, able to 2-shield through so many things, and Electrode is probably their best core mate, you know, once again going back to the grass rock core that you see so much even in the Open Great League with Bastiodon and grass or Carbink and grass. So in the ones, Yeah, this is a very RPS team, right? It you know, Electrode beats Lantern, beats other things, and then the things that Electrode typically loses to, the Rocks will beat. But keep in mind that all of these losses for the Rocks are in the ones. If we tick this all over to the 2 shield scenarios, which if you want to, you could certainly do so by dropping down advanced and then just dropping down 2 shields, and we'll just see how the Rocks do against this meta. And the 2 shields, as you can see, it becomes even more of a devolved RPS game, where they really only lose to Lantern, Hidden Power Ground, Luxray, and in some cases themselves, and they beat everything else. And that's the problem with the meta, and that's why they're so polarizing, is because unless you have a hard counter for them on your team in the back, waiting and ready to go, you are going to lose the 2 shields. And if your team is going to be alignment-based, like this one typically is, then you could have a problem. This is why this team is why Hidden Power Ground Luxray is as strong as it is because it can literally just hop in, farm them down, and then be fine. However, you know, even Lantern has to spend a shield. Everything has to spend a shield, so it's a very strong team, and as much as I hate how toxic it is, it's honestly probably the best team, if not close to it, in the entire meta. So let's jump into Team 3 here because I can't stand to look at this anymore. And we're going to look at Galvantula with Luxray and Lantern. This is actually the team that I ran to very good effect in last Electric Cup. I had my Galv. I have the Hidden Power Ground Luxray. Mine's not a Shadow, and I can attest that the non-Shadow is actually fairly good, especially as a safe swap, but is extremely good as a counter swap into the right matchups. And then Lantern is also back there because it's the consistency, it's everything you need in this cup. And if you're not aware, in certain situations, your Lantern can flip an Electrode. So yeah, that's something that's worth noting. So if you play that out enough, you might even go back and see some of my older battles that I've probably done that in some of my old Electric Cup video teams. But in any case, okay, yes, I know the Sims don't look great, but I can tell you that if you play this team in such a way that you can like power through things in the 2 shields with Luxray and use the energy from Galv and just all this is not so much a win, lead, lose, gain, or the RPS factor, right? This is going to be a meta where it's going to be very dependent on being able to manage the resources you have available to you, like your shields, your energy, and the health on your Pokemon, and the matchups at hand, and using those more to get advantage than relying on the RPSness of a matchup. So while this team on paper doesn't exactly hit the entire meta, I mean, not really anything does except for the Rocks anyway. But I can say from experience, this team is incredibly strong and worth trying. It's very good if you've got the Luxray, because Luxray really only struggles with 2 things. It struggles against Galv, and it struggles against Hisuian Electrode. Those are the 2 main issues that you'll find when you run Luxray. So if you can manage yourself around those matchups, you'll be okay. And that's kind of why we've got Galv in the lead, because it's able to handle both of those. Whereas Lantern is kind of back there as well to handle the other things that might be on that team. So looking good in this way. I like this team. The last 2 teams here we're going to take a look at are going to be a bit more on, I mean, I would say the spicier side, right? If you want to play alone, Rocks in the lead to try and hard counter those Galv leads that are probably going to be everywhere, I certainly don't hate it, but then you have to also be able to beat the things in the back. And so typically, like we already saw, the things in the back could include something but not limited to a Lantern or a Electrode. So what I've got here is just a couple options. You can really fine-tune this team. Maybe you throw Galv in the back to beat the Electrode. Maybe you maybe you just throw the the Lantern Galv or Lantern Electrode yourself. You can really do most anything. This meta is so small that most teams will probably function fine. But what I did was I grabbed 2 of the newer Pokemon here that have some updates, and I wanted to talk about them. And Palmot is a fighting type electric type, and even though it has Spark, it has close combat, and it's resisting the rock type damage, so it's always going to be worth a look as something that can potentially beat the Rocks. Now, the other way we can go about this as well is we look at XehrFelrose, which now is Trail Blaze. It's a grass-type move. It's going to allow it to firmly beat Lantern and firmly beat the Rocks, at least in the 1s. I'm pretty sure that the 2s, they still get, it still gets slapped. So when you're dealing with a low-end Rocks, it's very important to try and manufacture shield advantage somewhere so that you can try to use the energy play, if that's what your team is doing, to try and beat those. And then I want to talk about Magnezone for a second, because as you guys are probably going to see in a couple of battles of tomorrow's video where I show you one of my favorite teams for the Electric Cup coming up, hit the subscribe button, hit that notification bell, if you like, if you like what you see anyway. So I'm so bad at this, dude. But anyway, Magnezone, you guys know from experience how hard those wild charges can hit. And Luxray, or not, wow. I looked at the word Luxray and that immediately overtook everything in my brain. Magnezone, as well as I think even Magneton, I think they can beat the Alolan rocks as well. You see Magnezone is here and it beats the rocks, as does Ampharos. So again, we're just highlighting some things here that can beat the Alolan rocks. I threw Alolan Graveler up there because it makes sense, I guess. But overall, yeah, if you've got a team that can beat the Alolan rocks, you're probably doing okay, honestly. So we'll take a look at the final team here, and then that's it. So the last team here is a bit of a spicier pick, trying to find the cute things, and then we have Manectric in here. I straight up, I love Manectric in this meta. Manectric, unfortunately, does not have a good fast move other than Snarl in this meta. It's got Thunder Fang and it's got Charge Beam, which are not moves for it that we really like. But Overheat pretty much destroys anything in one hit with this meta. So if you play the mind game of Psychic Fang's Overheat, your Manectric just nukes the entire meta. Like, the only thing that Manectric really doesn't have a good time with is going to be, honestly, probably the rocks because they resist fire. But even then, that still does a lot of damage. And then also Lantern. Lantern is a problem. But everything else is pretty well threatened by Overheat from Manectric. And you're going to force a shield off of something. I mean, it don't matter. It's not going to be able to take too much more after an Overheat hits it, regardless of what it is. And we put Minun in here because I wanted to kind of highlight its moveset for a second. It's got quick attack, so it's got a neutral move into most things. It also has access to Grass Knot, which again, that allows it to beat the Alolan Rocks and Lantern, which is always a plus. And Togedemaru having Fell Stinger actually makes it a very good option to taking care of Hisuian Electrode. And the buffs from the Fell Stingers after that matchup, I'm assuming a Wild Charge or two would probably ruin things very quickly. So this team, once again, not necessarily going to be a hyper-functioning team, but it's a very safe team with a lot of nukes, a lot of capabilities of being able to take things out, right? And Manectric is a sim hero in this case because it's got Psychic Fangs and Overheat, but from experience, that Overheat hurts a lot. Manectric is very attack-weighted, so this is a fun team, right? You want to sue some super anti-meta fun team. Togedemaru walls the Galv and it walls the Electrode, and then you've got Manectric in the back to nuke things into oblivion, and you've got Minun in there to do its closing power or whatever you want to do with it. I still think that it'd still be fun to watch. But anyway, that's going to do it for me for the Electric Cup teams, guys. Thank you so much for watching this video. We're going to catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.